The late afternoon sun poured molten gold across the dusty road winding through the Carter Ranch, a vast expanse of Nebraska farmland owned by 45-year-old Daniel Carter. On paper, Daniel had it all, an estate that stretched beyond the horizon, thriving businesses, and influence in every corner of the county. But none of it filled the quiet ache that had settled in him ever since Clara, his beloved wife, passed away 5 years ago. Daniel adjusted his old cowboy hat and checked his watch. The meeting with investors had run long but ended well. Another profitable venture sealed. Still, even the prospect of success felt hollow. With no one waiting at home, what was it all for? His blue pickup truck rumbled over familiar gravel, kicking up swirls of dust behind him. The radio hummed a country ballad about love and family. Daniel reached out and switched it off. Silence, cold and familiar, wrapped around him like an old coat. Just as he rounded the bend near the east boundary of his property, something flickered in his rearview mirror. 2 tiny figures walking. He blinked. There shouldn't be anyone out here. His nearest neighbor lived 10 miles away. He slowed the truck, dust curling around him in the sudden stop. Daniel stepped out and stared down the road. There, trudging, with determined little steps, were 2 small girls, barely older than 3. One clutched a ragged stuffed bear, and the other held tightly to her sister's hand. Their blonde hair was tangled with wind and dust. Dresses, once white, now gray, with mud, tiny shoes caked in dirt. Their faces were streaked with grime, but their eyes were unmistakable, wide, exhausted, and pleading. He crouched down, trying to appear less imposing. "Hey there," he said softly. "Are you lost?" The girls didn't speak. The older one stepped slightly ahead, shielding the younger with a protective stance that no child should know. In her trembling hand, she raised the worn teddy bear toward him. Daniel's eyes caught something. Stitched into the bear's chest was a piece of paper, yellowed and creased. "What's this?" he murmured, carefully unfolding the note. Scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Help. Ms. Hattie very sick. No food. No medicine. Abandoned cabin." Daniel's heart clenched. He knew the place. An old forgotten cabin on the far edge of his property. He'd meant to tear it down years ago. He looked back at the 2 girls, standing silent in the dust like ghosts from some forgotten dream, their eyes locked with his, full of fear and fragile hope. "All right," Daniel said gently, motioning to the truck. "Let's go help Ms. Hattie." He opened the passenger door and lifted them in, one by one, their small frames light as feathers. The silence in the cab was deep but electric, like something sacred had just begun. As the truck bounced down the overgrown path toward the old cabin, Daniel glanced in the mirror. The 2 little girls sat close, the older one keeping her arm, protectively around the younger. They said nothing, but their presence filled the truck with something Daniel hadn't felt in years. Purpose. He didn't know their names. He didn't know their story, but something told him that this moment, this dust-stained encounter on a back road in the middle of nowhere, was going to change everything. The old cabin emerged from the pine trees like a ghost from a forgotten chapter of time. Its roof sagged, walls weathered and grayed by storms, the porch barely holding together. But from the crooked chimney, a thin thread of smoke curled into the air, a fragile sign of life. Daniel parked near the edge of the brush, throwing the truck into park. He turned to the girls. "Stay close," he said softly. But they were already clambering out of the seat before he could reach them, the older one tugging the younger's hand with practiced urgency. Together, the girls rushed toward the door and pointed insistently. Daniel called out, "Hello? Anyone home?" No answer. He pushed the door open slowly. The inside of the cabin took his breath away. It was clean, painstakingly so. Despite the broken floorboards and cracked walls, every surface had been scrubbed, every item in its place. A few pieces of mismatched furniture surrounded a wood stove, but it was the figure on the bed that drew Daniel's eyes. An elderly woman lay there, still and pale, her chest rising in shallow, uneven breaths. Her skin was flushed and shiny with fever. A makeshift compress had been placed on her forehead. Daniel knelt beside her. "I'm Daniel Carter," he said gently. The girls found me. The woman's eyes fluttered open. Clouded with fever, they struggled to focus. The girls, she rasped. Thank God. One of the little girls, Daniel guessed she was the older, moved to the woman's side with heartbreaking familiarity. She dipped a cloth in a bowl of stale water and placed it on the woman's brow with practiced tenderness. Daniel watched, stunned. They been with me, the woman whispered. Since my niece left them, said she'd be back in a week. She coughed, a deep, rattling sound, and Daniel supported her gently. Shh, don't strain yourself. No food, no medicine. Since Tuesday, she said weakly. Water from the creek. The words trailed off into a wheeze. Daniel glanced around. Cupboard stood bare. The girls' few belongings, 2 handmade bracelets, a torn blanket, a single doll, and the teddy bear, were stacked neatly beside the cot. 2 tiny bowls sat rinsed on the shelf. He looked back at the girls. The older one stood protectively in front of the younger, her little chin lifted with stubborn resolve. Neither had spoken a word, but their eyes watched every movement. You all need a hospital, Daniel said, pulling out his phone. Now, the woman, Ms. Hattie, gripped his sleeve. Don't separate them, she pleaded. They protect each other, always. As if to prove her point, the older girl reached for her sister's hand. The younger leaned into her instinctively, blinking up at Daniel with the wide, weary eyes of a child who'd seen too much. I won't, Daniel said, voice tight with something he didn't yet understand. I promise. He called emergency services, gave them the address, and requested immediate medical attention. While they waited, the girls quietly gathered their things, 2 small bundles of cloth tied around their precious belongings. They didn't cry. They didn't ask questions. They just moved together, 1 step at a time. As the setting sun painted the trees outside in gold, Daniel stood in the doorway watching them. He realized then that this was no ordinary encounter. These weren't just lost children. They were survivors. And somehow in one dusty afternoon they'd walked straight into his life and cracked open something inside him that had long since turned to stone. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the hospital corridor as Daniel paced outside the emergency room. He hadn't left the girls' side since the paramedics arrived at the cabin, nor had they left each other's. Not once. Ms. Hattie had been admitted for severe pneumonia and dehydration. The doctor said it was critical, but she was stable now. The girls, on the other hand, had been examined, fed, bathed, and clothed. Nurses were baffled by how still and silent they remained, how they refused to speak or be separated. They even clung to each other during their checkups, holding hands like a lifeline. Daniel sat stiffly in the waiting area, watching the hallway. Woman in a navy blue blouse and practical heels approached, clipboard in hand. Mr. Carter? She asked with a polite smile. He stood. Yes. I'm Vanessa Brooks, the caseworker assigned to the girls. She extended her hand. Thank you for bringing them in. Many would have simply called and walked away. Daniel shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. They needed help. Vanessa gestured toward an observation room down the hall. Would you like to see them? He followed her to a small room where a one-way mirror looked into a softly lit play area. Inside, the 2 little girls sat curled on the same chair, though there were several available, arms wrapped around each other. The older one clutched her teddy bear tightly. The younger leaned her cheek on her sister's shoulder, thumb in her mouth. They're undernourished, Vanessa said, flipping through notes, but otherwise physically fine. Emotionally, she hesitated. That's more complex. Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't stop staring at them. We're doing what we can, she continued. But there's a severe shortage of foster placements, and finding a home that can take 2 children together, especially bonded siblings, is a challenge. He frowned. What does that mean for them? Vanessa sighed. It means we may have to separate them temporarily. There's a foster family nearby that can take 1 girl tonight. Another might be available in the next county for the second. No. Word left Daniel's mouth before he even thought. Inside the room, the younger girl, Maya, he'd learned from the nurses, began to cry softly, as if she'd somehow heard. Her sister Lily immediately tightened her grip, whispering something into her ear. "You can't separate them," Daniel repeated. His voice was firmer now. "They've already lost too much." Vanessa studied him. "I understand your concern, but—" "They'll come with me," he interrupted. The words shocked even him. Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me?" "Temporarily," he added, scrambling to keep up with what he'd just offered. "Until you find a home that can take both. My ranch has space. I have resources. I can hire help." She tilted her head, wary. "You have no experience with children, correct?" "None," he admitted. "But I'm willing to learn. It's better than tearing them apart." Inside the room, Lily, the older one, turned and looked directly at the mirror. Her expression was unreadable but intense, like she was weighing something. Vanessa tapped her pen against the clipboard. "We'd need to conduct a background check, home evaluation, interviews." "Do it," Daniel said, "today if possible." By nightfall, after an avalanche of paperwork, reference calls, and a surprisingly thorough home interview, Daniel found himself signing the temporary guardianship papers. "This is highly unusual," Vanessa warned. "But given the situation and your resources, it's the best immediate solution." He nodded, the weight of responsibility pressing heavy on his shoulders. As the nurse helped Lily and Maya into fresh clothes, Daniel stepped outside to call Eli, his lifelong friend and ranch manager. "Eli, I need the guest rooms prepared." "For business associates?" Eli asked. Daniel paused, watching through the window as Lily placed a gentle hand on her sister's back. "No," he said. "Children. 2 little girls." The silence, on the other end, was long and loud. "It's temporary," Daniel added. But even as he said it, a voice deep inside whispered that maybe it wasn't. The late evening sky stretched wide and gold as Daniel's pickup rumbled up the long drive toward the Carter Ranch. In the back seat, Lily and Maya sat close together, buckled in but gripping each other's hands tightly. The 3-hour drive from the hospital had passed in near silence, broken only by Daniel's gentle attempts at conversation, most of which had been met with cautious nods or wide, unreadable eyes. Ahead, the main house came into view. A majestic structure of stone, cedar, and glass that overlooked acres of pasture and wheat fields. It was beautiful, but to Daniel it had been little more than a shell since Clara's passing. Until now. "Here we are," he said as he parked near the front entrance. "This is home." The word felt strange on his tongue. Home. He hadn't said it in years with any meaning. From the rearview mirror he saw the girls' faces pressed to the window, eyes wide, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. The house might as well have been a castle from a fairy tale. And they, 2 small peasants from the edge of the woods, unsure if they belonged. The heavy wooden door creaked open, revealing Eli, Daniel's ranch manager, friend, and right-hand man. At 65, Eli was still sharp, his weathered face calm, though his brow arched in surprise at the sight of the 2 small girls exiting the truck, holding tightly to each other like shadows. "These are Lily and Maya," Daniel said quietly. "They'll be staying with us. For a while." Eli gave a slow tut. "Welcome," he said gently, his voice softer than Daniel had heard in years. "We've got rooms ready for you." The girls didn't speak, but Lily gave the slightest nod, her chin lifted with quiet determination. Inside, the grand foyer with its vaulted ceilings and marble floors overwhelmed the girls. They stayed huddled near the door, eyes darting from chandelier to staircase as if unsure whether to run or cry. "You hungry?" Daniel asked, suddenly realizing he had no idea what to say to children. "There's warm food waiting." At the mention of food, both girls looked up with identical flickers of interest, followed by quick, cautious nods. In the kitchen, the smell of beef stew filled the air. Mrs. Evans, the housekeeper who stocked the fridge twice a week, had left it warming on the stove. Daniel ladled it into 2 small bowls and gestured to the large oak table. The girls didn't move. "Please," he said, pulling out chairs. After a moment of hesitation, they climbed, together, onto a single chair, refusing to sit separately. Their legs dangled, and they leaned into each other like two petals from the same stem. Daniel placed the bowls before them. They ate slowly, with near-perfect manners, but he noticed it anyway. Each girl slipped a piece of bread into her pocket when they thought he wasn't watching. He didn't mention it. After dinner, Eli guided them up the sweeping staircase to the guest wing. 3 adjacent bedrooms had been hastily prepared that afternoon, each with a child-sized bed, soft bedding, and a small basket of toys. "This one's for Lily," Eli said, opening the first door. "And Maya, yours is right next." "No." The voice stopped him cold. It was Lily, the first word she had spoken to any adult since arriving. Her face was pale but fierce. "Together," she said, turning to look at Daniel. "Please." Maya nodded, clutching her sister's arm. Daniel crouched down. "I thought you might want your own space." "No," Lily repeated. "She gets scared." Maya didn't deny it, just blinked up at him with wide, pleading eyes. Daniel gave a small nod. "Okay, we'll keep you together." That night, when he peeked into the room, he found the 2 girls curled on the floor just inside the door, fast asleep. The untouched bed sat neatly made behind them. Their few belongings, 1 bear, 2 bracelets, a blanket, lay packed beside them as if they were ready to leave at a moment's notice. He stood there for a long time. In the quiet, moonlight spilled through the window and bathed them in silver. Maya stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She didn't cry or speak, just stared at Daniel with those heavy, knowing eyes as if asking, "Are we safe here?" He gently laid a folded blanket over them. "You are now," he whispered. And for the first time in years, Daniel Carter walked back to his room with a feeling in his chest that didn't feel like grief. It felt like hope. The storm rolled in fast, thunderheads blooming over the Nebraska sky, casting long shadows across the Carter ranch. Daniel stood at his office window, coffee in hand, watching the horizon darken. The forecast had called it a spring drizzle. What came instead was a beast of thunder and wind. By the time the first boom rattled the windows, Daniel was already on his feet. He knew instinctively where to look. He found them under the dining room table. Lily and Maya huddled close together, the teddy bear sandwiched between them. Shadow the puppy pressed tight against Maya's legs. The lightning flashed again, followed by a window-rattling crack of thunder. Maya whimpered, burying her face in Lily's shoulder. "Hey there," Daniel said gently, crouching down. "That storm's got some lungs, huh?" Lily looked up at him, eyes dry but full of tension. Maya didn't move. "I used to hate storms too," Daniel added. "When I was little, I'd hide in the hallway closet. My mom would come sit with me. She'd bring a flashlight and tell me stories until the thunder passed." Lily blinked. "Did it help?" He smiled. "Sometimes. You want to see what helped the most?" 20 minutes later, the formal living room had transformed into something magical. Blankets were stretched from chairs to sofas, forming a cozy tent. Inside, battery-powered lanterns glowed with soft light, and Daniel had spread out a big star map across the carpet. Lily and Maya lay on either side of him, nestled into a tangle of quilts and cushions. Shadow curled up beside them, his nose twitching with contentment. "Every time the lightning flashes, count how long it takes before the thunder," Daniel explained. "That tells you how far away it is." Lily counted aloud. 1, 2, 3, boom. 3 seconds. That's maybe a little less than a mile away. Maya was silent, thumb in her mouth, wide eyes fixed on the ceiling of blankets, but her body slowly relaxed. "You know," Daniel continued, "my mom used to say stars were stories written in the sky, and if you knew their names, you were never really alone." He pointed at a constellation on the map. "That's Orion, the hunter, brave and strong." Another rumble rolled across the sky. This time Lily reached out, not for Maya, but for Daniel. Her tiny fingers found his hand and squeezed. Daniel held on. They stayed in the blanket fort all evening, counting stars, whispering stories. When Maya finally spoke, it was a whisper so soft it was almost lost to the rain. "Do the stars stay even in the storm?" Daniel looked at her. "Always." That night, Lily and Maya didn't sleep on the floor near the door. Instead, they stayed curled beneath the blanket fort, fast asleep in a nest of pillows, their hands still entwined. Shadow lay protectively at their feet. Daniel watched them, from the armchair beside the couch, unwilling to leave just yet. There was something sacred in the peace of that moment, something fragile, but blooming. As the wind howled and rain lashed the windows, the Carter house no longer felt like a monument to loneliness. It felt like something else entirely. It felt like the beginning of a home. The storm passed, leaving behind a fresh, damp world. The air smelled of wet soil and hope, and for the first time since their arrival, Lily and Maya ventured more than 10 feet from the house, Shadow bounding ahead of them, tail wagging like a flag of joy. Daniel stood on the porch watching the girls trail behind the puppy, still cautious but curious now. A week had passed since that first stormy night, and though they still insisted on sleeping together on the floor, something had changed. They flinched less. Lily began to speak in short, guarded sentences. Maya had even laughed. Once. "You're making progress," said Ms. Rose, the retired kindergarten teacher Daniel had hired to help during the day. With her silver bun and soft voice, she arrived each morning carrying books, crayons, and quiet reassurance. "They're still on alert," Daniel said, sipping his coffee. "I don't think they believe any of this is real." "They're survivors," Ms. Rose replied gently. "But survivors need more than safety. They need connection, trust, confidence." That afternoon, Daniel had an idea. He led the girls to the stable, a long cedar structure nestled beyond the pasture. As they approached, Maya hesitated, drawing back. Lily stepped in front of her, hand tight around her sister's fingers. "It's okay," Daniel said. "I want you to meet someone special." He stopped at the edge of the corral and whistled softly. Out trotted a dapple gray mare with warm eyes and a slow, gentle gait. "This is Star," Daniel said, patting her flank. "She's the sweetest horse we've got, kind and patient, and she loves meeting new friends." The girls stayed still. Maya's eyes widened. Lily's hand tightened. "Would you like to pet her?" Daniel asked. Lily blinked up at him. "Will she bite?" "Not a chance." Lily stepped forward first. Daniel knelt beside her, showing her how to flatten her palm. When Star's velvety nose brushed her fingers, Lily gasped softly. Not in fear, but in wonder. "She likes you," Daniel said. Lily looked over her shoulder. "Maya, come on." Maya hesitated. Then slowly she joined them. Daniel guided her hand, and she too touched the mare's nose. Her lips parted in a shy smile. Over the next few days, Daniel built a new routine. Every morning after breakfast, the three of them visited the stables. Lily and Maya helped fill water troughs and measure out feed. Daniel gave them each a set of tiny brushes and taught them how to groom the horses. Maya was hesitant, her movements small and slow. But Lily was fearless, asking questions, watching carefully, absorbing everything. "Horses are like people," Daniel told them one morning as they brushed Star's flanks. "They all have personalities. Some are shy, some are bold, but they all want to be understood." "I think I'm like Star," Lily said. "She watches everything before she moves." Daniel smiled. "You're right. And Maya?" Lily thought for a moment. "Maya's like Cricket, the quiet brown one. She's nervous but sweet." Maya didn't deny it. She just pressed closer to her sister and whispered, "What about you?" Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. "I think I'm like Blaze." Blaze was the spirited young colt who often raced along the fence, wild and fast, untamed, unafraid. Over time, Daniel noticed something else. Each girl had a color. It wasn't anything spoken, just felt. Lily always gravitated to blue. Maya liked purple. So Daniel had child-sized toolboxes painted for them, blue for Lily, purple for Maya, and hung them by their stalls. Then, one warm afternoon, Daniel took them to the creek at the edge of the property. Beneath the shade of a massive willow, he showed them how to build boats out of leaves and twigs. "My dad taught me this," he said, folding a leaf carefully. "We used to race them when I was little." The girls worked with quiet focus. Maya's boat capsized immediately and her face crumpled with frustration. Daniel leaned over. "Let's fix it together." He helped her reattach the sail, making it sturdier. When she set it back in the water, it floated. Her face lit up. Lily clapped softly. "See? Told you it would work." As the sun dipped low, the sisters chased, fireflies through the grass, barefoot and laughing, their voices light for the first time since they arrived. Daniel sat back, arms crossed over his knees, heart heavy and full all at once. This simple joy was something he hadn't known. He was missing. And as Maya caught a firefly in her hands and whispered, "It's like holding a star," he felt something click into place deep inside him. A quiet promise. He didn't know where this road was going or what it would ask of him. But whatever it was, he would walk it with them. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the letter arrived. Ordinary envelope, unfamiliar handwriting. Eli handed it to Daniel with a frown. "From the Department of Social Services," he said quietly. Daniel opened it at his desk. As his eyes scanned the words, a deep chill spread through his chest. Melissa Hart, biological mother of Lily and Maya, had made contact. She claimed to be rehabilitated and wanted her children back. A court date had been set, 2 weeks from now. He read it 3 times, not because he didn't understand, but because he couldn't quite believe it. The woman who had vanished, leaving 2 toddlers with a sick relative and no food, now wanted to re-enter their lives. When Vanessa Brooks arrived later that day, her usual composed demeanor was replaced with quiet concern. "She reached out last week," Vanessa explained. "Says she's completed therapy and found work. Says she's ready to provide a home." Daniel kept his voice even. "She left them. They were malnourished. No electricity, no running water." Vanessa nodded. "The court will take that into account. But the law gives biological parents a path back, if they can prove change and stability." "Do they have to see her before the hearing?" "Yes," she said carefully. "There will be a supervised visit here, so they remain in a familiar, safe environment." Daniel said nothing. He turned to the window, watching Lily and Maya chase shadow across the pasture. Their laughter floated on the breeze, light and unburdened. They had no idea what was coming. He couldn't bring himself to tell them. Not yet. That week, he memorized the little things. The way Maya sang to her stuffed bear in a whisper before bed. The way Lily tapped her fingers when she was thinking hard. The way both girls reached for his hand during story time without even noticing they were doing it. The day of the visit arrived cold and bright. Daniel waited in the living room, nerves twisting like barbed wire in his gut. Eli hovered nearby, eyes sharp, posture tight. Shadow sensed the tension too, pacing by the door. The sound of tires on gravel made Daniel's breath catch. Melissa Hart stepped out of a black rental car, dressed sharply, too sharply. Her clothes, her hair, even her carefully smeared mascara, looked like they belonged to someone trying to play a part. A man stepped out behind her. Older, well-dressed, calculated. Vanessa was already there, clipboard in hand. "Remember," she said quietly to Daniel. "Stay calm. Let the girls set." The tone. When Melissa walked into the living room, her eyes filled with instant tears. "My babies," she said, arms outstretched. The girls were on the carpet with blocks. They froze. Lily's arms immediately went around Maya, pulling her close. Maya's wide eyes stared at the woman. There was no recognition, no spark of reunion. "Don't you remember, Mommy?" Melissa asked, crouching in her designer boots. Daniel stepped closer. "I'm your mama," she said again, trying to smile. "Come give Mommy a hug." Maya scrambled backward, hiding behind Daniel's leg. Lily stood between them and the woman, chin lifted like a soldier. Vanessa intervened gently. Let's go slowly, Miss Hart. They haven't seen you in almost a year. I was looking for work, Melissa snapped, her tone sharpening. I planned to come back. Daniel said nothing. He didn't need to. The girls' faces told the whole story. The visit continued, awkward and forced. Melissa took photos, not of the girls, but of the house, the furnishings, the ranch. Her companion, introduced as Martin, asked casual questions about the property's value. Melissa grew frustrated when the girls didn't warm to her. At one point, she tried to force Lily into her lap. I'm your mother. You're supposed to love me, she hissed. Lily pulled away, silent but defiant. After an excruciating hour, Vanessa ended the visit. Melissa stood, brushing invisible lint from her sleeves. I'll be seeing you in court, she said coolly. And when the judge hears how you manipulated them, that's when Lily's voice cut through the air like a blade. You went away, she said. Melissa turned, startled. You left us, Lily repeated, standing tall, though her voice trembled. Jack doesn't yell. Jack brings us food. Jack stayed. Maya peeked from behind her sister. He makes the monsters go away, she whispered. Melissa faltered. For a moment, her expression cracked, but only for a moment. Vanessa's tone turned cold. I'll be including this behavior in my report. As Melissa and Martin left, Daniel exhaled slowly. His jaw ached from being clenched the entire time. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, he called his lawyer. I want everything you can find on her. I want to know what she's really after. He hung up and stood in the hallway outside the girls' room. Maya stood in the doorway, her bear clutched to her chest. Are we going away? She whispered. Daniel dropped to one knee and pulled her into his arms. I'm doing everything I can to make sure you stay right here, he said. She pressed her cheek against his shoulder. We want to stay with you. And for the first time, Daniel let himself believe what had once felt impossible. He wasn't just a guardian. He was becoming their father. The days that followed Melissa's visit passed like a storm cloud hanging low over the Carter Ranch. On the surface, everything looked the same. Breakfasts in the kitchen, chores in the stables, bedtime stories by lantern light. But underneath, a silent fear settled into the bones of the household. Daniel tried to hide it. So did the girls. But Lily watched everything, just as she always had. And Maya, quiet and sensitive, absorbed the tension like a sponge. One afternoon, as they worked, in the stable brushing down Star, Lily asked quietly, If our mom takes us, will we have to go far away? Daniel froze, his hand stilling on the brush. He crouched down to her level. I don't know what the judge will say, he answered honestly. But I promise I'm doing everything I can to keep you safe. To keep you here. Lily nodded, as if she already knew. Maya wrapped her arms around Daniel's neck, pressing her cheek to his shoulder. Don't let her take us, she whispered. That night, Daniel barely slept. His lawyer had uncovered troubling details. Melissa hadn't been in therapy. She hadn't been working. She'd spent the past year drifting from one resort town to the next, living off the generosity of a string of wealthy men, until she met Martin Donovan, a high-powered attorney with a sharp eye for opportunity. Shortly after that relationship began, she suddenly developed a renewed interest in reclaiming custody of her children. Children now living on a multi-million-dollar ranch. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. Vanessa returned 2 days before the hearing, her expression grim. Melissa's pushing for accelerated custody. She's presenting a parenting plan and arguing that you manipulated the girls against her. Daniel clenched his fists. Manipulated? They're scared of her. We know the truth, Vanessa said, but the court needs more than emotion. It needs testimony, documentation, evidence. She has none of that, Daniel said. I have everything. Yes, she said. But we need the girls too. Judge Simmons has requested to speak with them privately, to hear from them in their own words. Daniel's stomach turned. He hated the thought of them being interrogated like witnesses, but Vanessa reassured him. Judge Simmons is a good woman, fair, thoughtful. She'll listen. The day of the hearing dawned gray and cold. The courthouse loomed like a monument to everything Daniel feared. Inside, familiar faces filled the gallery. Ms. Hattie, now recovered and strong. Eli, dressed in his best button-down. Ms. Rose, clutching a paper bag of homemade cookies. Even the local vet had shown up to testify to the bond between the girls and the animals at the ranch. Lily and Maya wore matching navy dresses with white collars, simple, serious, and chosen by them. Maya held her teddy bear. Lily held Maya's hand. Melissa arrived late, arm in arm with Martin Donovan, who looked every bit the polished shark. Her makeup was perfect, her smile forced. She waved at the girls. They didn't wave back. Judge Simmons took the bench, an older woman with piercing gray eyes and a calm, measured tone. The proceedings began with Melissa's lawyer weaving a tale of a struggling single mother who had made temporary arrangements out of desperation. She presented therapy records, all recently dated. She spoke of remorse, of rebuilding, of a mother's love. When it was Daniel's turn, his attorney laid it all out. Photos of the cabin, medical records from the hospital, timelines proving 11 months of silence and neglect. Vanessa testified about the emotional state of the girls, their complete lack of recognition during Melissa's first visit, and the signs of trauma they carried. Ms. Hattie took the stand and told the truth, steady and unwavering. She left, then with me. Said she'd be back in a week. Weeks became months. The last time I called her begging for help, she blocked my number. The judge listened, unsmiling. Finally, Judge Simmons requested to speak to the girls in chambers. Daniel knelt beside them at the courtroom bench. "You don't have to be scared," he said. "Just be honest. Just be you." Maya nodded, her eyes big with worry. Lily squared her shoulders like a soldier. They walked out hand in hand. 30 minutes passed like 30 years. When they returned, Judge Simmons followed closely behind, her expression unreadable. She took her seat, folded her hands on the bench, and looked out at the room. Family law is not about emotion. It's about safety, stability, and best interests, she began. Biological ties are not the only ties that matter. She turned to Melissa. "Ms. Hart, your absence, your neglect constitutes legal abandonment under this state's laws. You did not provide for your children, physically or emotionally, for nearly a year." Then she turned to Daniel. "Mr. Carter, you took in 2 children who were not your own. You provided shelter, care, consistency, and love. You have created a safe and nurturing home." She paused, then added, "When I asked Maya where she felt safest, she said, 'With Jack, because he makes the dark go away and gives us food without yelling.'" Silence fell over the courtroom. "I hereby grant permanent guardianship of Lily and Maya Hart to Daniel Carter, with adoption proceedings to begin immediately." The gavel struck. Maya looked up at Daniel with wide, wet eyes. "Does this mean we stay?" He couldn't speak. He just nodded. Lily whispered, "Always?" Daniel pulled them both into his arms. "Yes, always." The Carter Ranch had never known a holiday season like this. Twinkling lights lined the wraparound porch. A massive pine tree stood in the center of the great room, its branches decorated with paper snowflakes, homemade ornaments, and 2 tiny, hand-painted wooden horses, one blue, one purple. Each day brought new crafts, new traditions, new warmth. For 5 years, Christmas had passed by Daniel like background noise. Business dinners, quiet nights with frozen meals, the tree, if there was one, bare and artificial. Now, there were boots by the fireplace, sticky fingerprints on the banister, giggles echoing through the hallway. The court had moved swiftly. Adoption Day came just 2 weeks before Christmas. The girls wore matching white dresses with satin ribbons, their hair curled by Ms. Rose, who wiped tears from her eyes as they stood before the judge. "I officially declare Lily and Maya Hart the adopted daughters of Daniel Carter, Judge," Simmons said with a rare smile. Maya clapped. Lily hugged her sister tightly. And Daniel, who had made speeches to corporate boards and press conferences around the world, found himself speechless. At the courthouse steps, they posed for a photo. Daniel, with an arm around each girl, the courthouse rising behind them. For once, it was a picture he wanted to frame. That night, the ranch house was filled with more people than Daniel had seen there in years. Eli roasted venison. Ms. Rose baked 5 different pies. Ms. Hattie arrived, stronger and smiling, with a tray of spiced apple muffins. The vet brought 3 tiny cowgirl hats for the girls. Vanessa dropped off a wrapped gift, storybook sets, and a letter of congratulations. Lily and Maya raced through the house in their new boots, showing off every room like they owned it, because now they did. Daniel stood by the fireplace, hot cocoa in hand, watching it all unfold like a dream he never thought to ask for. "Jack," Lily called, waving him over. "Come hang our ornaments." She held up a set of handprints painted on ceramic, each labeled in scrawled crayon. Lily 4 and Maya 4. He knelt beside them and helped place them on the highest branch of the tree. "You like our tree?" Maya asked. Daniel smiled. "It's perfect." As the guests gathered for dinner, Miss Hattie called for quiet. "We have a tradition," she said. "Everyone shares one thing they're thankful for this year." Eli went first. "I'm thankful for laughter in this house again," Ms. Rose smiled. "For second chances." When it came to Lily, she stood on her chair. Her voice didn't waver. "I'm thankful for my sister. And for Daddy Jack." The room held its breath. Maya added softly, "Me too." Daniel blinked fast, his throat tightening. When his turn came, he simply said, "I'm thankful for the day 2 little girls followed my truck." There were tears and applause. That night, after the last guest left and the fire had dimmed to glowing embers, Daniel tucked the girls into bed. Their room now, no longer just the guest room. "Jack?" Maya whispered as he turned to leave. "Yes, sweetheart?" "We love you." Daniel froze. Slowly he turned around. Lily reached out. "Do you love us too?" He walked back and knelt between their beds. "I love you both so much," he said. "More than anything." 2 sets of arms wrapped around his neck. The ranch was quiet. Outside, the snow began to fall. Inside, beneath a handmade star on top of the tree, a family sat whole and healed. The summer sun drenched the Carter Ranch in golden light, painting the pastures and fence lines in warm hues. The land was thriving, but so was the family. Daniel stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching 2 streaks of color dash through the grass. Lily in her bright blue cowgirl boots, Maya in her beloved purple ones. They chased after Shadow, older, now slower, but still wagging his tail like a banner of joy. "Lunch in 15, Daniel called. 3 years had passed since the day he found them on that dusty road. He often thought about how random it had seemed, until it wasn't. Until it became clear that nothing had been random at all. The adoption had long been finalized. The legal documents were filed away in a drawer somewhere, but the real proof lived in every hallway and sunbeam of the home. Paintings on the fridge, horsehair on the carpets, laughter bouncing off the barn walls. The ranch had evolved too. Daniel had converted the eastern fields into a new project, the Lily and Maya Foundation, a nonprofit offering rural healing experiences for abandoned and at-risk children. Each week, new kids arrived at the ranch for a few days of fresh air, animal therapy, and kindness. And at the center of it all were 2 now 6-year-old girls with matching braids and hearts big enough for everyone. Lily was the leader, brave, bold, already tracking inventory and feeding schedules with Eli in the ranch office. Maya, once timid and quiet, had become the storyteller, crafting wild tales for the visiting children and reading them aloud beneath the willow by the creek. As the girls came running back to the porch, cheeks flushed and hands full of wildflowers, Daniel opened the door wide. "Wash up first," he said, grinning. "Ms. Rose is making those cornbread muffins you love." Lily paused, her boots skidding on the mat. "We helped. I stirred the batter." "I licked the spoon," Maya added proudly. That night, after dinner and fireflies, Daniel made his rounds. Through the house. He peeked into Lily's room. tidy as always, books stacked by the window. Then into Maya's, less tidy, crayons and dolls everywhere. He didn't mind. In Maya's room, she was sitting up in bed, scribbling in her sketchbook by lamplight. "What are you working on?" Daniel asked, sitting beside her. She held up the page. It was a colorful drawing, 5 figures beneath a yellow sun. Daniel, Lily, Maya, Shadow, and a small child holding Maya's hand. "It's us," she said. "For the new kids tomorrow, so they know this is a safe place." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. "That's beautiful, Maya." She yawned and snuggled into her pillow. "Good night, Daddy." "Good night, sweetheart." He turned off the light and stood in the hallway. From the other room, Lily's voice floated out. "Love you, Jack." "Love you too," he called back. The hallway was quiet now, but not empty. The air hummed with life. Real life. The kind Daniel had once thought he'd never feel again. He stepped outside for one last look at the sky. Stars glittered above the fields and the breeze carried the scent of hay and honeysuckle. He thought about that day, 3 years ago, truck rumbling down a dirt road, 2 tiny figures appearing like a vision in the dust. They had needed help, but in the end, it was he who had been saved. Spring came early to the Carter Ranch that year. The fields turned green, the barn swelled with newborn animals, and laughter returned like a second language. But just as Daniel began to feel truly at peace, the past came knocking again, in the form of a pale blue envelope. Eli brought it in with the mail one morning, his brows furrowed. "Looks like her handwriting." Daniel didn't have to ask who. He took it without a word and opened it in his study. It was from Melissa Hart. The letter ran 5 pages long, dense with emotional appeals and carefully chosen words. She wrote of regret, change, and the time she lost. She mentioned therapy, faith, and personal growth. She talked about how she had rediscovered her purpose. But Daniel wasn't moved, especially by the final paragraph. It was a thinly veiled request for visitation rights, dressed up as emotional healing, but padded with lines that hinted at financial settlement, mutual understanding, and long-term goodwill. It wasn't about Lily and Maya. Not really. Later that afternoon, Daniel took the girls down to the lake, their favorite quiet place on the ranch. Lily brought her blue sketchbook. Maya held a bag of bread crusts for the ducks as they sat under the old willow. Daniel pulled out the letter and placed it on the blanket. "This came today," he said gently. "From your birth mother. She sent some pictures of you as babies, and she's asking if she could visit sometimes." The girls looked up, silent. Lily examined the photographs, her expression unreadable. "We look different now," she said. Finally. Maya didn't even reach for the letter. "I don't want to see her," Daniel nodded. "You don't have to. I'll support whatever you decide." It was Grace, quiet, thoughtful Maya, who reached out then. She picked up the letter, studied it a moment, and then calmly began folding it. Her small hands worked delicately, the creases clean and precise. Daniel recognized what she was making, a paper boat. When she finished, she looked up at him. "Can I?" He nodded. She walked to the water's edge and knelt, placing the letter boat gently on the surface. The 3 of them watched as Melissa's words, her apologies, her promises, her veiled motives, floated away on the lake, drifting farther and farther until they disappeared from sight. No tears, no anger, just quiet closure. The following summer, the Carter Ranch transformed again. Where once there were empty halls and silent rooms, now there was joy, chaos, and purpose. The Lily and Maya Foundation welcomed its first full season of children, many from foster homes, others recovering from loss or trauma. The ranch gave them a week of peace, nature, and unconditional kindness. And at the heart of it all, Lily, Maya Lily, now nearly 7, had become Eli's right hand in the barn. She tracked feeding schedules and cleaned stalls like a pro. But she also sat patiently with the nervous children, showing them how to brush a horse or collect eggs without fear. Maya, The girl who once barely spoke above a whisper had become a storyteller. She hosted afternoon circles under the willow, where children sat cross-legged as she spun gentle magical tales full of hope and healing. Daniel often watched from the porch, marveling at how far they had come. He still ran his businesses, still handled contracts and phone calls, but nothing meant more than watching the two girls who had once clung to each other for survival now giving that strength to others. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Daniel tucked Maya into bed. She held up her sketchbook. "I finished it," she said proudly. She showed him a drawing of 5 stick figures beneath a radiant sun: Daniel, Lily, Maya, Shadow, and a small group of children holding hands, beneath a banner that read "Welcome Home." "What's this for?" he asked, smiling. "For the new kids tomorrow," she said simply, "so they know this is a safe place." Daniel hugged her tight. "You've made this place safe. Both of you." As he turned off her light and stepped into the hallway, he paused. From Lily's room came soft humming. From Maya's, the rustle of sketchbook pages. From somewhere near the back stairs, Shadow gave a soft bark in his sleep. Peace. Real peace. Daniel looked out at the stars scattered across the sky. Those same stars he once taught the girls to count during a thunderstorm. Sometimes, he thought, the most beautiful stories begin when you're not looking for one. And sometimes the family you build is stronger than the one you're born into.